Hey, what's up guys? This is the bonus video that I said I would do today if every video that I put out this week got 20 likes, and they did, so I can't thank you enough for liking the videos. It's going to help the channel grow a lot. I really appreciate it. And this Bellator card looks like it could be decent for betting. I think there's one or two bets on this card that are pretty good. So fingers crossed, I can repay you guys for giving me some support this week by hopefully helping you to make a little bit of money on tonight's Bellator card, which starts in around 7 hours from now. So let's jump right in. The first fight that I want to cover is this matchup here between Valerie, Loureda and Colby Fletcher. Now the odds only came out for this fight today, and as you can see, Loureda is a massive favourite, so that's something that we definitely have to take into consideration when we're trying to evaluate if this fight is going to be good for betting. So both girls are pretty inexperienced. Valerie Loureda has an amateur record of 2-1, but this is her first pro fight, and Colby Fletcher, she is 1-2. So two very inexperienced girls fighting on the main card of quite a high profile Bellator event, but unfortunately there's not a great deal of footage available on them. The only footage that I could find of Colby Fletcher was this fight against Alice Jaeger from way back in 2015, so it's possible that she could have made big improvements since this fight, and we also don't really learn a lot about her in this matchup. So the fight doesn't last very long. It's done within about 2 minutes, and the only thing that I really noticed about Fletcher was that her striking defense isn't very good. Notice in that exchange there just a few moments ago, she doesn't use much head movement, her chin up's high and exposed, and Jaeger's able to tee off on her and land some big shots. And if you find this fight on YouTube, again, she eats a big left hand there. You'll see that for the entire duration of this fight, like I say, it doesn't last very long, but there's no doubt that Fletcher is definitely there to be hit. So that could cause her some big problems in this fight, because Valerie Loureda is an Olympic level taekwondo fighter with very, very good technical striking. Now, there is only one fight of Loureda available online that I could find from her amateur record from back in September 2018. But to be honest with you, if I bring that up here, she does look very good. So just before I go into showing you that fight, just wanted to bring up the point that Loureda seems to be in a strong position to have a pretty good run in Bellator. She trains at American Top Team, which is obviously a great gym for a young, inexperienced fighter to start learning MMA, and she's obviously got a high-level pedigree in Taekwondo. But when you look at these kind of pictures, what I would say is that Bellator have signed a lot of female fighters in the past for their marketability, and that hasn't really worked out, possibly because they throw, these highly marketable female fighters that look great into high-profile matchups a little too soon, and that could possibly be what we're seeing with Loureda. But to be honest with you, from this fight here against, I believe her name is Hannah Jackson, let me just double check. Yeah, this fight against Hannah Jackson shows that she might actually have a good level of skills to back up her marketability. So we'll start this fight here. What I would say about this fight is that Jackson, you can just tell from the way that Jackson moves that she is decent, even though this is only an amateur fight. Jackson, the way she moves around the octagon, the way that she defends herself, the way that she carries herself, you can tell that she's got some experience behind her. So it's not like Loureda has been running through total bums on the amateur circuit. She does look decent. So if we start the fight here, we can see that she's very aggressive when she lets her hands go, and you can imagine what that might mean for this fight, because we saw in the footage that I just showed you from Fletcher, Fletcher, she doesn't have the best striking defense, not the best head movement, and with how aggressive the Loureda is, I mean, look at that spinning back kick here. With how aggressive and how technical Loureda is, she could cause a fighter like Fletcher some significant problems. I mean, look at that kick there. With someone just moving forward with their chin up high and exposed like Fletcher does, that could be a kill shot and a fight-ending shot from Loureda. So if we carry on, what I would say is, if we just move on a bit further into the fight, you can see again here Loureda getting very aggressive with her strikes, with an axe kick there. And she obviously hits very hard for a female fighter as well. You can see Jackson backing up. Loureda comes forward. Absolutely no retreat in Loureda at all. So you can see why she's a big favourite with Fletcher having such bad striking defence. The only other thing I wanted to show you from this clip, because we don't really get a chance to learn too much from this clip, is at the end of the round, where these girls are just exchanging. Look at how excited Loureda is. Just in that exchange there, right at the end of this round, both girls let their hands go. Loreda's going full Nate Diaz and trying to entice Jackson into an exchange. And right at the end of the round, Loureda absolutely loves it. She loves a scrap. So, you know, when you see an experienced, heavy-hitting striker like Loureda going up against a less experienced fighter like Fletcher with bad striking defense, you know, Loureda does look to be a justified big favourite. All I would say is that obviously that is literally the only fight that I'm able to assess Loureda on. Only one of her MMA fights anyway. And what I would say is, back in June of last year, she did lose this split decision to Mariana Pena. And even though I can't find that fight, the commentators for this fight against Hannah Jackson did allude to the fact that Pena may have caused Loureda some problems with her wrestling. So obviously we don't know anything about Loreda's grappling. She's training at American Top Team, which is great, but we haven't seen anyone shoot a takedown on her. We haven't seen any of her ground game. Now, we haven't seen any of Fletcher's ground game either, but that definitely makes this fight unbettable for me, because if you look at the odds on Loureda here, you know, she's down to around, call it an average of around 1.15. Giving her an implied probability of 87%. That's absolutely mental, considering we've never seen her defend a takedown, we've never seen her ground game. You know, does that beg the question that there might be a little bit of value on Fletcher? You know, say her odds are an average of around 5.50. Well, at an 18% implied probability, there could be a little bit of value there, but it's not personally the kind of bet that I like to place, just because there are so many variables. And with how aggressive and how heavy-handed Loureda looks, and how bad Fletcher's striking defense looks, even at these odds where the payoff is very generous, I just think there's a little bit too much risk there. So I would recommend passing on that fight personally, because there's so many unanswered questions. There's a lot we don't know about these girls. So moving on to the next fight, which is Erick Silva against Yaroslav Amosov. So Erick Silva making his Bellator debut, and Silva looked absolutely amazing at the weigh-ins yesterday. Physically, he looked excellent, and I was kind of hoping that we would see Silva back to his best, because Silva's career fell off a cliff when you saw the drug testing came into play in the UFC. But I was hoping, now he's back in Bellator with more relaxed drug testing, he may be able to, you know, find the kind of form that we saw from him back when he was in the UFC. But when I checked Erick Silva's record, I saw that he has actually fought since leaving the UFC, which I didn't realise. He fought back in July against Nick Barnes in LFA. So we can see that fight here. Let me just pull this fight up here. And what I would say is, even though this isn't in the UFC anymore, and you'd think that with more relaxed drug testing, Silva might have been able to rekindle, you know, some of the explosiveness, or regain some of the explosiveness that we saw from him in the UFC. He still didn't look great here against Nick Barnes, if I'm honest with you. Here they're in the clinch very early on in the first round, and look, Silva makes a huge mistake. I have no idea why he did this, but he's got double underhooks around Barnes, full control of Barnes' body. He's chipping away at him in the clinch, and then for whatever reason, Silva just decides to, I guess, kind of half-heartedly go for a throw, which just results in him ending up on the bottom. He essentially pulled mount there. You see Nick Barnes falls into full mount, which is obviously a very strong position to be in. But Silva manages to create a scramble and get out of it. This video isn't working too good, guys, so I don't want to skip around too much on it. But once they're back up, you know, again, this is only halfway through the first round. And Erick Silva, when he was in the UFC, was crazy explosive, carried knockout power in every shot. I kind of wanted to see Silva show some of that same explosiveness. Now he's outside of the UFC and he's not under such strict drug testing regulations. But as you can see from this clip here, I'm just letting it run in the background. Silva, even 3 minutes into this fight, is just lacking explosion. Not really that impressive. And then if we just skip a little bit further ahead to this point in the fight, around about here, you will see that, you know, they both start exchanging. Erick Silva gets slightly over aggressive and gets dropped. So Silva starts to let his hands go, but even there, if I just rewind a little bit further, Silva doesn't appear to have the same explosiveness in his shots. Notice how when he's coming forward, he's kind of reaching with his shots. Just nowhere near as dangerous as he was in the UFC. So even though he's not under strict drug testing regulations anymore, it looks like we're not going to see Silva back to his best. Even in this fight in Bellator, you'll see now just Silva nowhere near as dangerous as he used to be. His shots just not as explosive, not as much pop on them, not as much explosion. And in a few moments, if we just leave this running, you will see just about by here, Silva gets dropped when he gets overly aggressive. So comes forward and gets dropped there. Ends up on the bottom. Silva actually manages to catch bands in an armbar and win this fight. But as you can see, you know, not that impressive, to be honest with you. Certainly we are not getting vintage Erick Silva. So what does that mean for this fight? You know, does Yaroslav Amosov deserve to be a big favourite? You know, he's currently around about 1.33 as an average, 1.31, which gives him an implied probability of 76%, which is massive, to be honest with you. So does he have a 76% chance of winning this fight? Well, I'm going to just let this fight run in the background because, to be honest with you, I watched quite a lot of Amosov's fights. And there's nothing specific that I really want to talk about or call out. He's just one of those guys that's pretty good at everything. He's not going to blow your hair back. He's not amazing, doesn't really have knockout power, not a particularly strong wrestler, not particularly dangerous on the ground, but he is reasonably good everywhere. Just a solid fighter, intelligent, good fight IQ, and good cardio for 15 minutes. So, to be honest with you, this is the kind of fighter that would cause Erick Silva a problem, because we saw from Erick Silva where he ended up in bottom position going for that throw in that fight against Nick Barnes, and also got caught coming forward being a little bit overly aggressive. Amosov's kind of one of those guys that can probably go out, fight smarter, fight more technical, make better decisions, and win an easy decision. So it is one of those fights where from a betting perspective it's tough, because an implied probability of 76% on Amosov is very, very aggressive, to be honest with you. I mean, if we look at the odds on Silva, call it an average of odds are around 3.60. That gives him an implied probability of 28%. And Amosov's not amazing. Like, I'm not sure if he deserves to be such a big favourite in this fight. But at the same time, even if there is a little bit of value on Silva, I always say the value doesn't pay the mortgage at the end of the month. Money in the bank pays the mortgage at the end of the month. And where we know Amosov is just a smart, intelligent fighter that's reasonably skilled everywhere, he should be able to grind out a win here just through fighting smarter, avoiding any crazy exchanges, avoiding, you know, Silva's big shots when he comes forward, getting overly aggressive. And if he just stays smart on the ground, this should be a fight that Amosov can win. So while, you know, mathematically there probably is a little bit of value in Silva here, personally, this is not a bet that I want to place. I understand why people would bet Silva. I don't think he's a bad bet, because, you know, if we look at Amosov, I'll bring up his record here. He is inexperienced. He's only 25 years old, and even though he's 20-0, his record is super padded. You know, he's got a lot of wins against very inexperienced guys. You know, we see this guy here, Abdullayev, it was his debut. Konovalov, only 3-0. Berzagov was on a losing record when he fought him. You know, Rizaev, losing record. This guy, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name. You know, he was making his debut. Olen Nichev. You know, if you go back through his record, you can see very, very padded record for Amosov. So yes, there probably is a little bit of value at an implied probability of 28% on Erick Silva. But for me, it's just not the type of bet I like to place, because Amosov is a smarter fighter, a more solid fighter, and Erick Silva just is not the same guy that he used to be. So I'm going to pass on that one, but I understand why someone would take a gamble on Silva. So then the next fight, guys, is a fight that I do think could be good for betting. This is Cheick Kongo against Vitaly Minakov. So let me just close these windows down here so that I can explain to you what I mean. So every once in a while, I feel like the bookies cap a fight just scanning Wikipedia. I don't really think they actually consider how the matchup could play out and what both skills each fighter brings to the table. I just think they scan Wikipedia, they see that Minakov's 21-0, they see that, you know, back in 2014 he already beat Cheick Kongo, and I think they just assume that Minakov's going to win again. You know, he's undefeated, he's beaten Kongo before, and really they're probably just capping this fight without putting that much work into it, without putting that much thought into it. And that's a dangerous game to play, because every fight is different, and in order to cap someone at these odds, they basically have to have absolutely no chance of losing. If you look at the odds on Minakov here, he's around about a 1.18 favourite on most sites, and if we put that in, that gives him an implied probability of 85%, which means he basically should have almost no way of losing this fight. Now, when you take into account the fact that, you know, judges are bad in MMA, disqualifications can happen, injuries can happen, flash knockouts can happen, you know, heavyweights hit really hard. Every heavyweight carries knockout power. You know, I don't believe really that any heavyweight in the world should be, you know, should have an implied probability of 85% against any other able-bodied heavyweight, because it only takes one shot to end the fight. So Minakov at these odds is absolute madness, to be, if I'm honest with you, and that's before we even consider, you know, how these guys match up stylistically and how the fight could play out, just from, you know, the things we know about MMA with injuries, bad judging, you know, flash knockouts, the fact that heavyweights carry knockout power. There's probably already value on Kongo before we even dive into how this matchup could play out stylistically. So let's dive into the matchup stylistically and see how much of a chance Kongo has of winning this fight. So let's take a look. So the first thing I want to show you is this matchup between Vitaly Minakov and DJ Lindemann. So the first thing that I want to show you is Minakov's questionable striking defense. So notice how he just walks forward, you know, comes forward, doesn't really respect Lindemann's threat of a knockout at all. Just walks forward, hands down low. You saw there, Lindemann was able to catch him with a straight left hand. Just here, watch how, I think I've gone back a little bit too far. I think it's just about here. Watch, Minakov gets caught with a big left hand as he comes in. Just here, bang. And Lindemann's a heavyweight. He carries knockout power. Where you're walking forward like that, you know, Minakov is 21-0. But when you're walking forward like that against heavyweights, you will get caught. There will come a point in time where he gets knocked out, because you can't afford to fight like that. So that's what we see from Minakov in every fight. Walks forward, hands down low, shows no respect for his opponent, and he does eat big shots on his way in. We can see he's just walking forward, showing absolutely no respect for Lindemann at all there. So then, if we just skip forward a bit further into the fight to about here, again, you see same story. Minakov coming forward, not much respect for Lindemann, and watch what happens here. Lindemann catches him with a really big left hand, another big left hand. I'll go back to it again. Watch here, another big left hand from Lindemann. But Minakov relies on his chin, eats it, and fights through it. But then, if we go even further into the fight, oh, there we go, it's already got to it. So watch what happens here. So Already in this fight, we've seen Lindemann catch Minakov with 2 big left hands, and Minakov hasn't made an adjustment. He still comes forward, you know, hands down low, not showing Lindemann any respect. And watch what happens here. He continues to come forward, and he gets wobbled. Lindemann catches him with another big shot and wobbled. But there, even though Minakov's hurt really bad, it's at the end of the round, and he's possibly saved by the bell. But look at that, guys. Wobbled. Lindemann catches him for a 3rd time in the round. So this all happened in the first round, guys. You know, if Lindemann's able to land those kind of shots on Minakov, a guy like Cheick Kongo definitely can. You know, Lindemann landed those shots hard. They were 3 potentially knockout shots there. And Minakov, not showing him any respect, almost ends up getting knocked out here at the end of the first round. So that's what I wanted to show you from Minakov. Now, I want to show you one of Kongo's recent fights to try and help us gauge whether, you know, there's a legitimate chance that he could knock Minakov out in this fight, whether he could punish Minakov for his poor striking defense and catch him on the way in. So this fight against Javi Ayala took place quite recently. It was back in May of last year. So let's just take a look at this, guys. So a lot of Cheick Kongo's fights are fought in the clinch. He's obviously a decisionator. He's quite a boring fighter, and it doesn't take long for this fight to end up in the clinch. You see Ayala shoot in on a takedown there, ties Kongo up, and then they just battle for position in the clinch for a few minutes, like a lot of Cheick Kongo's fights end up looking, to be honest with you. But then, if we just skip ahead to later on in the fight, and there you can see, I'll just skip through it, the typical Cheick Kongo fight, lots of time spent in the clinch, hugging it out, battling for position. But if we skip ahead to the end of this video, check this out. And it's over, I've gone too far. So we'll just watch it from here, guys. So they're back in kickboxing range now, back in the centre of the octagon, and look what happens. Ayala, not respecting Kongo's power, comes forward with his hands down and gets caught with a huge right counter. Check out the speed of Cheick Kongo. Ayala comes forward, looking to tie Kongo up, and bang, gets caught with a massive right hook counter, or right straight counter with the distance that he threw it from. Absolutely brilliant knockout from Cheick Kongo, and finishes him off with a kill shot on the ground. So I just wanted to show you that clip, guys, because just based on the footage that I've shown you, there is no way on earth that Vitaly Minakov should be a massive favourite with an implied probability of 85%. From what we've seen in his fight against Lindemann, it's a definite possibility that if he comes forward with his hands down low, he walks onto a huge knockout shot from Kongo. Now, obviously, Kongo's chin isn't the best. You know, he does lack urgency. His fight IQ is not the best. But at the end of the day, when you look at the payoff, I mean, look at the odds on Kongo. You know, you can bet him for around about 5.50 at the moment, giving him an implied probability of 18%, the same implied probability that we saw from Fletcher against Loureda. And when you take into account, you know, the fact that Minakov's got bad striking defense, Kongo's a big, strong, powerful striker with knockout power. You know, Kongo's also a strong grappler. When you take into consideration the possibility of bad judging, you know, Minakov might get robbed, you know, disqualifications, you know, Minakov might be injured. There is definite value on Kongo there, guys. So that is how I feel about that fight. You know, let me know in the comments whether you agree or disagree. I think Kongo is just one of those bets, based on the footage that I showed you, that win or lose, whether Kongo goes out and gets in a 15-minute grind fest against the cage and loses a split decision, or if he gets knocked out in the first 10 seconds, win or lose, I think Kongo is a great bet at these odds. This is one of those this is one of those bets I've been talking about this week, where there's 2 types of bets I like. I like the low-hanging fruit, where, you know, a fighter's got significant advantages over their opponent everywhere and there's not much risk, you know, and the odds make a bet worthwhile. You know, we can go for the easy winners, or the bets where there's a decent element of risk there, but the payoff is massive. The risk is worth the reward, and that's how I view Cheick Kongo in this fight. I think the risk is definitely worth the reward, and if this bet loses, I will sleep like a baby, because I think it's an excellent bet. It's a bet that there's no way you can call it a bad bet based on everything we know about MMA, based on, you know, how heavy-handed heavyweight fighters are, and based on, you know, how casual Minakov is when he comes forward. So that's that fight out the way, guys. Let me know what you think. Do you think Kongo is a good bet? Leave it in the comments below, but, you know, I certainly think there's value there. So the next fight that I want to talk about on Bellator 216 is another fight where I think that there's really good value, or not really good value, but potentially a bet on this fight. So if we jump into it, obviously Cro Cop's now 44 years old. Roy Nelson is 42 years old, and both these guys, their best days are definitely behind them. They're definitely way past their prime. But what I would say is Nelson seems to have fallen on harder times than Cro Cop, and it appears that Father Time is catching up with Nelson in quite a big way. If we look at Nelson's record, of course, I hate to be that guy that just looks at a fighter's record and makes a judgment, but Nelson has only won 3 fights in the last 5 or 6 years, and those wins came against Jared Rosholt, a shot Antonio Bigfoot Silva, and Javi Ayala. So not that impressive. So only 3 wins in your last, you know, 5 or 6 years isn't great. And even though Cro Cop has obviously been absolutely tearing through guys that are much lower level than him out in Japan, you can only beat what is put in front of you, and I'm sure Cro Cop would have equally struggled against some of these guys that Nelson did. But at the same time, in Nelson's last few performances against Kharitonov, Mitrione and Volkov, we have started to see signs that Father Time is catching up with him, whereas even though Cro Cop is well past his prime at 44 years old, when you go back and take a look at some of his recent fights in Japan, he still looks quite sharp. I'm going to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here in some of these clips. So, the first fight that I want to show you is this fight against Amir Alikbari from back in 2016. So obviously, Cro Cop has suffered some injuries since then. He hurt his ACL, which he said in these Fight Week interviews this week that he has recovered from. He said that he spent several months putting in 6 to 7 hours a day of rehab. So he's confident that his knee will be a lot better for this fight. But Cro Cop at 44 years old is going to have loads of chronic injuries and loads of issues. So is Nelson. It's impossible at the age these guys are competing at to be going in 100% healthy. So that is obviously a risk that we need to consider. But in this fight against Amir Alikbari, you see Cro Cop still moving very sharp. If we look about at this point, you know, Cro Cop moving around the ring very, very nicely. And here we see Alikbari. He throws a right hand here. Watch it here, and Cro Cop reads the attack and just slips the punch. Beautiful stuff from Cro Cop here. Watch Alikbari throws it here, and Cro Cop just slips out the way and circles to the left. Beautiful stuff. Then if we skip ahead a bit further on into the fight, again in kickboxing range, right in the middle of the ring, and here you will see that Cro Cop just reading the movement of Alikbari. Alikbari starts to get more aggressive and is coming up as he throws a shot here. Look at that. Alikbari throws a big right hook and Cro Cop just slips his head. That slight head movement there. Beautiful stuff. Slips his head and evades the power strike. So the point I'm trying to make from this clip is, even though it was 2 years ago, and there you go, I'll just pause it there so we can talk about the finish in a second. But there you can see, even though this fight was 2 years ago, Cro Cop still looks pretty sharp. His reflexes are still there. His striking defense is still there. And the way he's, you know, slipping these punches looks very, very good. And after he slips this right hand, they tie up for a little bit. And then it doesn't take Cro Cop long to land the kill shot. Cro Cop's obviously had a couple minutes to find his range. Lands a big shot there on Alikbari to knock him down, and then eventually gets the finish. And there you can see how aggressive Cro Cop was on the ground there, going for the finish. You can see that even at 40, well, he would have been 42 years old when this fight took place, still looks dangerous, still looks powerful, and still looks explosive. Now, I'll play some footage of Nelson in a little while, but the point that I wanted to make about that fight is that Cro Cop still looks explosive, still looks dangerous, still looks powerful, whereas Father Time appears to have caught up with Nelson, and he looks quite slow now. Doesn't look as powerful, doesn't look as dangerous as he was, 3 or 4 years ago. Now, it's possible that Cro Cop might not be as explosive as this. Of course, we're 2 years further down the line, has suffered a knee injury since then, but, from the fights that I've seen over the last few years from Cro Cop, still looks pretty sharp. So, the next fight I want to show you, obviously Nelson's a strong grappler, so we should consider, Mirko Cro Cop's takedown defense and also his ground game. What are the chances that Nelson takes him down? What are the chances that Nelson's able to win this fight on the ground? So if we start this fight against King Mo from back in 2016, so again, it was 2 years ago, although it was at the end of 2016, so, it's about 2 years ago. We can see the Cro Cop's takedown defense is pretty good, to be honest with you. If we start the fight here, you can see that Cro Cop lands a vicious body kick in a moment. You'll see it here. The body kick lands there, right across the chest of King Mo, and King Mo clearly didn't like that at all. So doesn't want to stand and strike with Cro Cop. Very quickly looks to take the fight to the ground, and Mirko Cro Cop throws a naked kick, and King Mo's able to catch it and turn it into a takedown. Very nice. But that early on in the fight, to me, it looked like Cro Cop just got caught cold before he had time to settle into a rhythm and get comfortable, and King Mo was able to capitalize and make him pay. But they're back up now, and from there, King Mo really struggles to get this fight to the ground from there on in. Cro Cop starts to show amazing takedown defense. Like I say, I think where he was taken down at the beginning of that first round, I just think that he got caught cold. King Mo was able to capitalize on a naked kick that Cro Cop through, but after a few minutes where Cro Cop had started to warm up, settle into a rhythm, get comfortable, King Mo really didn't get close to another takedown for the rest of this fight. So I'll just show you some of Cro Cop's takedown defense here. So at this point in the fight, you will see King Mo shoot the takedown. It's coming any moment now, and really nice and early. Notice how Cro Cop gets his underhooks in play this time. If I just rewind there, King Mo shoots in quite deep actually. It was quite a slow takedown entry, but if you notice here, King Mo does get in below Cro Cop's hip height, which is obviously where you want to be, but Cro Cop reads it, and he's able to get underhooks in play quite early and stuff the takedown very easily. Now, what's impressive about that and all the takedown defenses that I'm going to show you in this clip is that Cro Cop's defending these takedowns in a ring. He doesn't have the cage to help him defend takedowns. If his takedown defense is this good in a ring, it should be much better in the Bellator cage, because obviously you can use the Bellator cage to create a wider base, a stronger base, and get his underhooks in play, and use the cages, use the cage to defend the takedown. He can also use the cage to stand back up if he does get taken down. So we'll just carry on here. Another clip that I want to show you about a minute later into this fight is a much deeper takedown shot from King Mo. So notice there, King Mo threatened the takedown just a few moments ago. Ducked down, threatened like he was going for it. Just coming up. King Mo feints the takedown here. There he is. But notice what happens. God, it's really hard to skip the specific parts in this video. But notice when I'm talking about Cro Cop having amazing reflexes still at this stage in his career, this is what I'm talking about. Watch, as King Mo feints to shoot a takedown, watch how Cro Cop just reacts to it and moves away. Do you see that? Do you see that, guys? As King Mo shoots, notice how Cro Cop backs up. As King Mo shoots, Cro Cop backs up. And with Cro Cop backing up, creating extra space between King Mo and Cro Cop, that extra space allows Cro Cop to get his underhooks in play and defend the takedown, because King Mo's now got more distance to cover. So Cro Cop very good at reading the movement of his opponent and slipping their power strikes and getting underhooks in play to defend takedowns. So here, a much deeper shot this time from King Mo. He gets in much deeper on Cro Cop's hips than he did on the takedown attempt I showed you a few moments ago. Really in deep on a single there. but Cro Cop's able to use the cage to stuff it that time. Eventually gets 2 underhooks in play, lands a knee there, and eventually manages to disengage, I believe, just in a few moments. We don't need to see that. Disengages there. But yeah, a really deep shot from King Mo, and Cro Cop was able to defend that takedown, which is super impressive. Imagine how much easier it would have been to defend that takedown if he had a cage behind him, you know, to plant his feet and create a strong base. But he didn't. You know, the ring ropes are really flimsy, they're not stable, and yet Cro Cop still had the balance and the strength and the technique to defend that takedown. So super impressive. So then we will move on a bit further into the fight, into the second round. We are going to skip ahead quite a bit to this point in the fight, where what's interesting about what Cro Cop does here is that obviously we know King Mo's intention is to get this fight to the ground. He's struggling badly against Cro Cop standing, and he is trying to set Cro Cop up for takedowns. So obviously Cro Cop is thinking about defending the takedowns. He's not focused on what King Mo might do with his hands. You know, King Mo hasn't really threatened that much with his striking in this fight. So Cro Cop is going to be thinking about the shot. He's going to be thinking about the takedown. But watch what happens here. So if we hit play here, look at that there. And it's only a subtle small thing, but I'm trying to make the point that even at this stage in Cro Cop's career, he's still very sharp. So Cro Cop is going to be looking out for the takedown. He's going to be looking out for the takedown shot. But watch what happens when King Mo throws a power right hand here. Watch it, guys. Power right hand, come in, bang. King Mo hasn't thrown many power right hands all fight. He's staying low and compact to threaten the shot. Look at that there, guys. Look at King Mo's stance, how low he stands, because he's threatening that he could shoot in at any time, and Cro Cop's aware of that. But watch what happens when King Mo, instead of going for a shot and trying to take Cro Cop down, when he actually throws a power right hand. Watch here, Cro Cop slips to his left to evade the punch. Amazing striking defense, amazing reflexes, even at this stage in Cro Cop's career. Brilliant stuff. And that's really significant in this fight, because all fight Cro Cop's been thinking about defending the takedown, and when King Mo finally lets his hands go, again there, guys, look at that. Look at that. King Mo's backing Cro Cop up. Cro Cop's thinking about the takedown. And then as soon as King Mo goes for a power shot, again, watch here, beautiful. Power right hand. Cro Cop slips the shot. Even at 42 years old, absolutely brilliant. But the writing was on the wall from here, guys. Doesn't take very long now for Cro Cop to get the finish. Believe it's coming any second now, so we'll just keep the video running. Again, King Mo shoots in on a really deep takedown attempt, but Cro Cop's able to get double underhooks in play early, lands a couple of big left upper hooks on King Mo and puts him away. And again, look at how aggressive he is. 42-year-old man on the ground going for the kill. So that is everything I want to show you about Cro Cop, guys. Really impressed. Like I say, he might have declined a lot in the last 2 years, but based on the footage we saw from him in very late 2016, still looking really, really sharp, even, you know, now that he's in his 40s. Unfortunately, I don't think the same can be said for Nelson. Nelson's 42 years old now, and throughout his career, he's always relied on a very technical ground game, a very heavy top game, and a super powerful, you know, overhand right that can put anyone to sleep. He's got a nuclear missile in his right hand. But if we check Nelson's record, it's been a long time since Nelson landed that big right hand. He doesn't really have many wins by KO. You know, if you look at his record here, in the last 5 or 6 years, Nelson only has 1 win by KO, and that was against an absolutely shot Bigfoot Silva. So even though Nelson has got a reputation for having a really powerful overhand right, a really dangerous overhand right, he hasn't really been that effective with it over the last 5 or 6 years, and that's because people have read him. People understand what he's trying to do now, and they're able to see it coming and slip the punch. And as we saw from how sharp Cro Cop's reflexes look, how good his striking defense looks in the fights that I just showed you, I think it's going to be really difficult for Nelson to land that power right hand. But Let me just show you some footage of Nelson here. So very early on in his last fight against Kharitonov, watch how he just ducks his head down all the time. He just comes forward, ducking his head down. Notice here, ducking his head down. And this takedown entry is something I just want to briefly talk about, because watch how high up on Kharitonov's hips it is. If you notice, in the last fight with King Mo that we watched against Cro Cop, King Mo's takedown entries were below Cro Cop's hip height, which means you could get in really deep on Cro Cop's hips and upset his balance. That's how you want to shoot a double leg takedown. Get in below your opponent's hips, get them off balance, and dump them on the ground. But watch here, Nelson's takedown entry on Kharitonov is very, very high above Kharitonov's hips, which gives Kharitonov much more space to get underhooks in play, because obviously when you want to secure underhooks, you want to get them underneath your opponent's armpits, and the lower down your opponent is, the harder it is to get deep underhooks in play. So the fact that Nelson's shooting in above hip height just is going to make it difficult for him to get to get a takedown on Cro Cop, when we look at how good Cro Cop's takedown defense was against King Mo. But the next thing that I want to show you here is just in these striking exchanges. There's a perfect clip of it, and Nelson's doing this all the time lately. Watch how Nelson's just ducking his head down all the time. He ducks it down there, he ducks it down there, you know, he ducks it down there, he ducks it down there, ducks it down there, and it's just not smart. It's not a smart thing to do, guys. Cro Cop hits extremely hard. We saw the left uppercuts that he was able to land on King Mo. Cro Cop's obviously got killer head kicks, and Nelson at 5'11" it's not going to be difficult for Cro Cop to land one of those killer head kicks on him. So when Nelson is, you know, ducking his head down, it just sets up the knockout for Cro Cop. It gives Cro Cop an excellent opportunity to land a knockout shot. So we'll carry on here. We will go through the fight. You know, there's a foul there. Kharitonov lands a low blow. But when the fight restarts, let me just get to the correct point that I want to show you. Now I want to show you that Nelson's overhand right is significantly less dangerous than he used to be. So take a look at this clip here. You'll see most of Nelson's punches actually fall short. So take a look at it here. Nelson throws the overhand right in a moment. He's about setting it up, throwing feints. Punches are falling short, and notice there, he kind of, in the past, Nelson would time that right hand to land with so much speed and impact on his opponent that it would kill them dead. But when he throws it now, he's just not as fast, not as explosive as he used to be, doesn't have the same timing. And so when he throws it, he kind of reaches with it, and that's what happens here. Notice he throws it. Kharitonov sees it coming from a mile away, and he's easily able to get out of range and circle to his right, away from Nelson's power right hand. So, you know, Nelson, the point I'm trying to make there, again, reaching with his shots, again, a takedown above Kharitonov's hips. Nelson's knockout threat is just not as dangerous as it used to be. So then the last thing that I want to show you in this fight is the ending sequence. So Nelson, even though his cardio has never been amazing, what I've noticed in some of Nelson's last few fights is that now he tends to slow down significantly much earlier on in a fight. And another thing that's changed is, in the past, when Nelson would slow down, he was still very dangerous. He still hit very hard. Whereas what I'm finding now is that when Nelson gets tired, he's just not dangerous anymore. And this sequence here, 3.5 minutes into the first round, will show you that. So these guys have only been, you know, fighting for 3.5 minutes. Not a particularly grueling, crazy pace either. And you'll see what I mean about Nelson. So take a look at this exchange here. So Nelson coming forward, and in a moment you'll see Kharitonov land a body shot. Any moment now. There's the body shot there. A left hook to the body. Now, when the left hook to the body lands, notice what Nelson does. So he takes a big deep breath here. There's the big deep breath. And just Nelson there starting to show signs that that body shot is zapped the last bit of cardio that Nelson had to use in this round. And then watch what happens. Now Nelson's shots, more telegraphed, way slower than they were at the beginning of the round. And Nelson starts to just become much less dangerous. Look at Nelson's punches now. Now that that body shot has landed and taken the wind out of his sails, Nelson doesn't have the power to back Kharitonov or hurt him anymore. Look at that left hand that Nelson throws there. You know, lands on the side of Kharitonov's head. There's no damage at all. Lands with no impact. And again, we just see Nelson swinging recklessly. And from there, it's only a matter of time before Kharitonov gets the finish. Nice uppercut there. And Nelson, you know, he throws a left straight that lands on Kharitonov. But now that he's tired, now that he lacks explosiveness, just doesn't have the power to back Kharitonov up, and there's nothing he can do. Kharitonov just walks him down and gets the finish. Let's just watch this unfold. There you go. Nelson struggling to back him up. Uppercuts landing. Landing jabs on Kharitonov, but can't back him up. And Kharitonov just taking his time, staying patient, finding his range, and just picking Nelson apart, looking for the finish. And eventually, too many big power shots land for Kharitonov, and it is all over. Nice knees land in a clinch, and then the big uppercut lands to put him away. There it is. Third time lucky. So that's it for that fight, guys. So as you can see, Nelson, as soon as Kharitonov landed one shot to the body, you know, Nelson was super tired, didn't really have any power left in his shots. And we know Cro Cop's got vicious body kicks. Remember the 2 body kicks that we saw him land on King Mo? Absolutely vicious. They're going to zap Nelson's cardio. Also, Nelson, it just doesn't have the timing or the explosiveness anymore to really back his opponents up or land a kill shot on them. You know, that big right overhand right's nowhere near as dangerous as he used to be. And in the 2 fights that I showed you from Cro Cop, we can see that his reflexes are still very sharp. Also, Nelson's takedown entries tend to come in above his opponent's hips, which give his opponents much more time to get underhooks in play. And as we can see from Cro Cop, he does a really good job of getting underhooks in play. So I'm struggling to see where Nelson wins this fight, if I'm honest with you guys. And if we look at the odds at the moment, they are all over the place on this fight, to be honest with you. The odds on Cro Cop range from around about 1.64 down to around 1.55. But they do appear to be improving. If we take a look here, we can see that yesterday Cro Cop was around about a 1.45 favourite. Now you can get him at 1.64, which is a massive improvement in the odds. And odds of around 1.64 give Cro Cop an implied probability of 61%. I think there's value there, guys. Obviously, Cro Cop's 44 years old. He's coming back to action after suffering a really bad knee injury. It's possible that he could have declined a lot over the last 2 years. And it's possible that Nelson does find a way to get a takedown and put Cro Cop in a really bad position on the ground and win an ugly decision or get a submission. It is possible that Nelson could land an overhand right and knock Cro Cop out. But based on the footage that I've just shown you, I think that Cro Cop could be a good bet at these odds. Obviously, if your bookies only got Cro Cop at around about these odds, 1.55, which gives him an implied probability of 65%, there's not as much value there, but I still think there's a little bit of value there. Not much, but a little bit. And I think Cro Cop could be a decent bet in this fight, guys. But let me know what you think in the comments. Just from what I've shown you, I think I might take a shot on Cro Cop, but let me know if you agree, guys, what you think in the comments below. So then we move on to the final fight of Bellator 216, the one we're all waiting for, Paul Daley against Michael Venom Page. And I'll hold my hands up here. I've got to be honest with you. I spent, about an hour researching this fight, and I just have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. Full disclosure. I've no idea what's going to happen, and sometimes you get fights like that. But what I am going to try and do is give you my thoughts on it, so that hopefully, you'll have a bit more information that you can use to make your own betting decision on this fight, on whether to take a shot on one of these guys or whether to pass. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the size difference. So if we look at the media stare down from earlier on in this week, we can see that there is a huge size difference here. Page absolutely towers over Paul Daley, and the size difference looks even bigger when they separate here. So that's obviously a big factor in this fight, because Paul Daley needs to get inside to be able to hurt Michael Page, and Michael Page obviously does a great job of staying on the outside, fighting long, and using his reach. So it's not going to be easy for Daley to cover distance and get inside on Page and land anything significant. You know, we were talking about how size and reach can be a big factor in my breakdown video for the James Vick Paul Felder fight that I put out yesterday, and everything that I said in yesterday's video also applies to this fight. And we look here, you know, Page has got a 77-inch reach and stands 6'3", and even though his reach advantage isn't that big over Paul Daley, you know, he's only got a 2-inch reach advantage. Daley only being 5'9" means that he's going to have to cover so much more distance to land on the chin of Page than Page is going to have to cover to land on the chin of Daley. And the difference with the range in this fight is that Page is much harder to hit than Vick is. He's much more elusive, and he's also much more deadly with the counter. You know, his countering speed and the impact that he lands in, his timing is amazing. So, you know, Page is dangerous. It's a dangerous fight for Daley. Now, what I would say, based on the footage that I've watched, is that Michael Page obviously looks amazing in, you know, all the fights that he's had in Bellator, apart from the Gonzalez fight, which we'll talk about in a moment. But at 13-0, he has looked amazing. My only issue with where Michael Page is at this stage in his career is the fact that, for me, his opponents do appear to be beaten before they step foot in the cage with him. And what I mean by that is everyone just looks terrified of him. You know, the David Rickles fight, Rickles was just looking for a way out. From halfway through the first round, you could tell that he just didn't want to be in there with Page. He was terrified. And when fighters go up against Page, it's almost like he beats them mentally before they get in the cage with him, because they're so worried about getting humiliated or suffering a devastating knockout. You know, I think his knockouts of, you know, Evangelista Santos and Ontiveros, you know, the really vicious ones which gone viral, have kind of put guys into a defensive shell and a negative mindset before they get in there. And I hate to say pro fighters are scared, because they're not. They've got bigger balls than I'll ever have. They're fucking alpha male badasses that go into a cage and fight in their underwear for a living. It's super gangster. But with Page, it's probably one of the few examples where I could say that his opponents, a lot of his opponents, genuinely do look scared in there with him. And that's significant in this matchup, because Paul Daley won't be. Paul Daley does not give a fuck about Michael Page, anything that Michael Page is good at, or anything that Michael Page can do to him. Daley is a wild man. Doesn't care. He's going to walk Page down, and he's going to try and punch his face off, and that is literally Daley in a nutshell. So that's an interesting dynamic, because in the past, you know, Daley's been able to use his flim-flam very early in fights to put his opponents into a defensive shell, and then from there it was only really a matter of time before they looked for a way out, and he gave it to them by either knocking them down or put them in a position where he landed a big shot and KO'd them. Now, Daley's different. Daley, it's going to be very hard to put Daley into a defensive shell, because if Page starts clowning him, or if Page lands a couple of big shots, you're not going to see Daley start going on the back foot and defending himself like some of these other guys like Rickles and Holloway and Ontiveros or Gonzalez. You're going to see Daley bite down on his mouthpiece, come forward and try and take Page's head off. And there were flashes in his fight against Fernando Gonzalez that Page didn't like pressure. You know, it took Gonzalez a long time to get comfortable in there. You know, he was in a big defensive shell for the first half of the fight, just stayed on the outside and used his boxing in reverse to defend himself against Page. But in the second half of the fight, when he started to get more comfortable and find his range and started to get a few reads on Page, he had a lot more success. He started to walk Page down a little bit, and there were signs that Page didn't like the pressure. Page was never really in any danger, but then Gonzalez, not particularly known for his knockout power either. If we look at his record, Gonzalez is a bit of a decision machine, or he was last time I checked his record. Hopefully he hasn't been KOing a bunch of guys since. But yes, as you can see, Gonzalez, an absolute decision machine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his last 7 fights have gone the distance. So Page... And that's another thing that I would say, that actually brings me on to my next point, right? So it's all good dancing in the cage and fucking around and using the flim-flam and like slipping punches and taking the piss out of your opponents against guys that don't carry knockout power like Rickles and Gonzalez and Holloway. But you're taking a big risk if you do that against Daley, because we saw in Daley's fights against Lorenz Larkin, and also against Brennan Ward, he is still an absolute murderer. If you give him a slight window of opportunity, he has got the power to KO you dead. So Page needs to be careful here. You know, a lot of the shit that he's done throughout his career, all the flashy flim-flam, the dancing, you know, the showboating, works against guys that don't have the power to hurt you, but you're taking a big risk when you do that shit against Daley. And don't really want to compare Page to Anderson Silva, because obviously Anderson Silva is one of the greatest of all time. But what I would say is Silva also built a career off flim-flam and showboating and shenanigans and intimidating his opponent with, you know, crazy antics in the cage. And when Silva lost to Weidman, when he was knocked out that first time against Weidman, from there on, you know, it changed him forever. You know, in his fights since then, you know, it really took up until recently against Adesanya for him to start showboating again. He's been a serious fighter in his matchups against Cormier and Nick Diaz. You know, his fights against Brunson. You know, there were no showboating, there were no antics, wasn't any showboating against Bisping. And I think that's because showboating and the flim-flam was such a massive part of what made Anderson Silva great, you know, because it made his opponents question themselves, it intimidated them, you know, it confused them. That's one of the reasons why Silva's style was so effective. And if you go up against someone that doesn't respect the showboating and the flim-flam, it can have a big impact on how you fight. And I think we've seen that in Silva since he lost the first fight to Weidman. So if Michael Venom Page, his entire skill set is based around showboating, if when he has to get involved in a serious kickboxing match against someone that he can't afford to showboat against, if Daley is good enough to force Page to stand and have a traditional style kickboxing match with him, will his fighting style be as effective? That's the point I'm trying to make. Will we see the same version of Page on well, tonight in a few hours? I'm not so sure, but it's something worth thinking about, guys. You know, is Daley devastating against these low-level guys that cannot process his crazy style, that get intimidated by his shenanigans? But when he faces a higher-level striker like Daley, will he be a completely different guy? Will he lose confidence in it like Anderson did after that loss to Weidman, after Weidman showed that he was human? So just something to think about, guys. Just something for us to think about. So what I would say is, from a betting perspective, Page's odds have actually declined a little in the last couple of hours. So he's currently around about, call it an average of 1.42, giving him an implied probability of 70%, compared to Paul Daley, who you can currently bet him at around about 3.0, giving him an implied probability of 33%. Now, if I'm capping this fight personally, I give Page around about a 60% chance of winning, and I give Daley around about a 40% chance of winning, which means the odds on Daley, the odds on Page are pretty much spot on, roughly where they should be. I don't think Page is a good bet at these odds. I think the odds are very accurate. But Daley's an interesting bet at odds of 3.0 for an implied probability of 33%. And the reason why I capped this at 60-40 is because you have to give Page an advantage, because his size difference will make it difficult for Daley to get inside. And also, Daley's going to have to put himself in danger if he wants to land on Page. And Page is so nasty with the counters and the kill shots that there's a significant chance that if Daley gets over aggressive and starts headhunting and comes in without watching his P's and Q's, he's going to get caught with one of Page's big right or left hand straight counters. You know, his straight hand counters are devastating. You know, it's not so much the power that he lands with, it's that he's so fast that you don't see it coming, and the speed and impact he's able to deliver those counters with are devastating. So guys, there is a bit of value there on Daley, I think. I don't like this as much as, I mean, this is obviously a gamble, because he is going to find it difficult to get inside on Page, and he is going to have to put himself in harm's way to get in and land big on Page. But based on how Page struggled a little bit with Gonzalez's pressure, and based on the fact that, you know, Daley will not respect him, he will not be scared of him, he will try and punch his head off, I think there's value there. But obviously the payoff's not as good on this gamble. I love the gamble on Kongo because he has a clear path to victory, and the return is very, very generous. The odds are very generous. The odds aren't as generous on Daley. The payoff isn't as good, but I do think there's a little bit of value there. So that is it for this event, guys. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I will be back next. Actually, I will be back tomorrow because we still got 3 fights to cover from UFC on ESPN1, which takes place tomorrow night. I've already done 3 videos breaking that card down, but part 4 will be coming tomorrow. So yeah, please like this video, guys. Please subscribe. Look out for my other videos, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.